Hey, listener, welcome back. We're diving deep today into something uh, every product manager, I think, has to master,
Definitely.
and that is turning strategy, all that big picture stuff,
Oh, yeah.
into actual shipped products.
Yes,
And we're
yes.
not talking vague business speak here,
Right.
but an actual framework you can use, the
Mhm.
strategy to execution framework
Yes.
from the IEA.
This is a fantastic blueprint for navigating those sometimes tricky waters of
Yeah,
product development,
absolutely.
like turning those big, sometimes fuzzy strategic goals
Uh-huh.
into results you can measure that users are going to love.
Absolutely. It's like having a GPS,
Yes,
guiding you through a complex product launch. But
exactly.
instead of street names, it's got things like stakeholder engagement and design thinking.
Right.
I noticed the guide goes pretty deep into the implementation phase,
Yeah,
which I think is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of product managers.
it is.
Where's the meat of this framework for someone in that role?
One of the biggest takeaways for me is how it emphasizes clarity right from the start.
Yeah.
Think about those times when a project just goes sideways
Oh, yeah.
because no one's quite sure who's doing what.
Happens all the time.
This framework just nips that in the bud.
So it's all about defining roles and ownership early on,
Yes,
making sure everyone's on the same page from day one.
precisely. Like answering those crucial questions.
Okay.
Who's designing what? Who's responsible for the configuration?
Uh-huh.
Ultimately, who owns this product?
Right.
And, without those clear answers,
Yeah.
you're setting yourself up for confusion and duplicate effort
Totally.
and potentially, project delays or even failures.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
You can't build a house without knowing who the architect is,
Right.
who's laying the foundation, who's ultimately responsible for the finished product.
Exactly.
It's like the guide is saying, here's your team charter.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's signed on and knows their role.
It's a great analogy, and the guide goes a step further. It even suggests onboarding everyone with all the relevant documentation.
Oh, wow.
It's like saying, let's make sure everyone's reading from the same playbook.
I like that.
Yeah, this shared understanding is key, especially when you're dealing with complex projects
Right.
where things can easily get lost in translation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of shared understanding,
Yeah.
this framework really hammers home the importance of design thinking.
Yes.
It's not just something you sprinkle on at the beginning.
Right.
It's woven throughout the entire process.
That's right. The guide talks about continual design thinking
Okay.
and a functional-based design thinking approach,
Interesting.
highlighting that it's an ongoing process,
Yeah.
not a one-time event,
Got it.
which makes so much sense, especially for product managers. You're
Yeah.
constantly dealing with evolving user needs and market demands.
Always changing,
Always.
right? It's like design thinking becomes the glue that holds the whole process together.
Yep.
Ensuring that the product stays user-centered from conception to launch and beyond.
Exactly. It's a mindset that encourages you to keep asking, how can we make this better for the user?
I love that.
It's about constantly challenging assumptions, looking for those creative solutions,
Wow.
even after the product has been launched.
And this design thinking focus leads right into what I found really interesting in the guide,
Okay.
and that's this emphasis on thorough design reviews before any code is written.
Yes,
It's like saying, let's make sure we're building the right thing before we start building it.
absolutely. It's about catching those potential issues early on,
Yeah,
when they're much easier and cheaper to fix.
for sure.
And this ties into the concept of deeper user journeys.
Yeah, this concept really caught my eye too.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit more? What makes these user journeys deeper than the ones we're used to seeing?
Think of it this way. A typical user journey might just outline the steps
Okay.
a user takes to complete a task, but a deeper user journey goes further.
Okay.
It captures not just the steps, but the assumptions,
Got it.
the business rules, the constraints,
Right.
and even the user interface linkages at each stage.
So it's like taking a walk in the user's shoes,
Yes.
understanding their pain points, their motivations, and how they navigate the product.
Exactly.
This level of detail can really help in creating a product that truly meets user needs.
Absolutely. It's like creating a highly detailed blueprint
Yeah.
that everyone can reference.
Uh-huh.
It helps ensure that the product is not only functional, but also intuitive and enjoyable to use.
Now, another thing that stood out to me was this idea of recurrent scope management.
Yeah,
It sounds a bit technical,
it does.
but I think it's super important for product managers,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with complex projects that can easily sprawl out of control.
Right. Recurrent scope management might sound intimidating,
A little bit.
but it's basically about acknowledging that in any project,
Yeah.
things change.
Things always change.
They do.
Yeah.
So this framework encourages a flexible approach,
Okay.
allows you to adapt to those changes
Right.
without derailing the entire project.
So instead of rigidly sticking to a plan that's no longer relevant,
Right.
you're constantly evaluating and adjusting the scope based on new information feedback,
Yes.
even changes in the market.
Precisely. It's about being adaptable and responsive,
Okay.
understanding that things won't always go according to plan.
Totally.
And to do that effectively,
Yeah.
you need to involve your stakeholders.
Yeah. Stakeholder engagement. The guide stresses this throughout the entire process.
Yes.
It's not just about gathering feedback at the end.
Right.
It's about keeping stakeholders in the loop continuously.
Exactly. By involving stakeholders early on and continuously seeking their input,
Yeah.
you can ensure that the product aligns with their needs and expectations,
Right.
minimizing the need for those major changes down the line.
Oh, boy.
Plus, it helps build buy-in and support
Yep.
from the people who will ultimately be using or affected by the product.
And I imagine this also helps with managing scope creep.
It does.
When everyone is aware of the project's goals, constraints, and progress,
Yes.
it's less likely that new features or requirements will be added haphazardly.
You're spot on. It's about creating a shared understanding
Yeah.
of what's in scope and what's out of scope.
Totally.
And remember, it's not just about gathering feedback. It's about engaging stakeholders in the design process, making them feel like they're part of the solution.
It's almost like having a constant feedback loop
It is.
where you're constantly validating and refining the product based on input from the people who matter most.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's an iterative process with continuous checkpoints
Right.
and adjustments based on feedback and those evolving needs.
Makes sense.
Mm.
And that brings us to another crucial aspect,
Yes.
governance and sponsorship.
Right. The guide mentions continuous governance and sponsorship and the need to involve the governance group in various activities and decision-making,
Right.
especially during the implementation phase.
Why is that so important?
Think of the governance group as the guardians of the strategic vision.
Okay.
They're there to make sure the project stays aligned with the overall goals and objectives. By including them in the process, you ensure that the product
Yeah.
is not only meeting user needs,
Right.
but also contributing to the bigger picture.
So it's not just about having a governance structure in place.
Yes.
It's about actively involving them in the implementation process.
Absolutely. They need to be more than a rubber stamp. They
Right.
need to be engaged, informed,
Yeah.
and actively participating in those key decisions.
So I've got clear roles, continuous design thinking,
Yeah.
deeper user journeys,
Yeah.
flexible scope management,
Right.
and active stakeholder engagement.
Yes.
What else does the guide highlight for effective implementation?
Well, wouldn't be a successful product launch without a great team. Right. The framework really emphasizes the importance of fostering a positive and productive team environment.
I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways in that area?
The guide focuses on creating a culture of support
Okay.
and continuous improvement.
Yeah.
It highlights the importance of relentless team member encouragement,
I love that.
continuous learning,
Yeah.
reinforcement of achievements, and of course, a structured feedback loop.
It's so easy to get caught up in deadlines and deliverables
Yeah.
that we forget about the human element.
Yes.
Celebrating wins, encouraging each other, creating a space for learning.
Yes.
That's what makes a team truly thrive.
Exactly. By fostering that kind of environment,
Yeah.
you empower your team to adapt, grow, and take ownership of their work.
Right.
And when you have a team that's motivated and empowered, you're much more likely to succeed.
This makes me think about the importance of transparency,
Uh-huh.
especially when it comes to things like schedules and budgets.
Yes.
The guide talks about this quite a bit.
Transparency builds trust and accountability.
Yeah.
When everyone has a clear understanding of the project timeline and budget, it fosters a sense of shared responsibility.
Right.
Helps keep everyone on track.
It's like having a shared dashboard where everyone can see the progress, identify potential roadblocks,
Yes.
and work together to find solutions.
Exactly. Transparency is key to effective collaboration and problem solving.
So far, we've really dug into the nitty-gritty
We have.
of implementing the strategy to execution framework,
Yeah.
focusing on those essential elements that make a product launch successful.
And to see how all of these pieces come together in the real world,
Okay.
the guide includes a case study
Oh, perfect.
that we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
That's a great lead-in. I'm eager to see how these strategies play out in a real-world scenario. See you in part 2.
See you then. Welcome back, listener. We just finished unpacking some of those core elements
Yeah.
of implementing the strategy to execution framework, focusing on those key steps that can really make or break a product launch.
For sure.
It's like we've laid the foundation,
Oh,
and now we're ready to see how those foundational pieces come together in an actual real-world build.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I think the case study and the guide comes in.
Yes.
It's like a field trip for our brains,
It is.
showing us how this framework has been successfully applied
Right.
in an actual transformation program.
In a real-world setting.
I'm ready to put on my learning hat.
Yeah.
So tell me, what kind of transformation are we talking about in
Okay.
this case study?
So this one focuses on a large organization
Okay.
that was undergoing a major digital transformation,
Oh, wow.
which involved a lot of moving parts.
I bet.
They were essentially trying to overhaul their entire IT infrastructure
Huge.
and move to a more cloud-based system.
That sounds like a massive undertaking. I bet there were tons of challenges
Oh,
involved.
absolutely. Think about all the different stakeholders involved.
Yep.
Executives, IT departments,
Right.
end users, vendors.
Yeah,
Everyone had a stake in the game,
for sure.
and their needs and expectations often conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there were tight deadlines,
Oh,
budget constraints,
Yep.
and the ever-present risk of technology glitches.
Yeah, it's like trying to juggle a dozen flaming torches while riding a unicycle on a tightrope.
It is.
So how did they even begin to tackle this transformation
Right.
using the strategy to execution framework?
Well, the first thing they did was really focus on the program strategy,
Okay.
which acted as a kind of North Star,
Uh-huh.
guiding the entire project.
Got it.
They clearly outlined the organizational context,
Okay.
the specific challenges they were facing,
Yeah.
and most importantly, the desired business outcomes.
So it's like setting the stage,
Yeah.
making sure everyone understands the why
The why, exactly.
behind the transformation.
Right. And to ensure things ran smoothly, they established a
Yeah.
robust sponsorship and governance framework.
I remember you mentioning that earlier. Why was that so crucial
Right.
in this particular case study?
Think of it as building a solid support system.
Right.
They created a very clear governance structure
Uh-huh.
with well-defined role and responsibilities,
Right.
and they made sure the project had strong executive sponsorship.
Got it.
This helped ensure alignment, accountability,
Yeah.
and perhaps most importantly, effective decision-making throughout the entire process.
I can see how that would be crucial.
It was.
In a complex project like this,
Yeah.
with so many stakeholders and moving parts,
Yeah.
you need a clear chain of command
You do.
and a way to resolve conflicts quickly and efficiently.
Absolutely. And they didn't just pay lip service to stakeholder engagement.
Yeah.
They had a comprehensive stakeholder strategy
Uh-huh.
that identified and engaged all relevant stakeholders
Wow.
throughout the entire project lifecycle.
So they were constantly communicating, gathering feedback,
Yes.
and making sure everyone felt heard and understood.
You got it. They used a variety of methods to engage stakeholders,
Okay.
from surveys and interviews to workshops and focus groups.
Interesting.
They even created a dedicated communication plan
Oh, wow.
to keep everyone informed of progress
Yeah.
and any changes along the way.
That's really impressive. It sounds like they went above and beyond
They did.
to ensure that everyone was on board
Yes.
and felt like they were part of the process.
Exactly.
To keep everything organized and on track, they developed detailed execution roadmaps.
Yes, they did.
I'm picturing like a giant flow chart
Okay.
with all the different tasks, timelines, and dependencies laid out.
That's a good way to visualize it.
Yeah.
The roadmaps provided a visual representation of the
Mhm.
different streams of work,
Right.
phases, components, and even stakeholder events,
Wow.
ensuring that everyone was on the same page,
Right.
working towards those same goals.
It's like having a shared GPS system,
Yeah.
guiding everyone towards the same destination. And to secure the necessary resources and support,
Yes.
they developed a rock-solid business case.
They did.
The business case, the all-important document
Yes.
that convinces the powers that be
Right.
to invest in the project.
Mm-hmm.
What did it focus on?
It outlined the investment required,
Yes.
the potential risks involved,
Yeah.
the expected return on investment,
Uh-huh.
the benefits to the organization,
Right.
and of course the overall value for money.
Makes sense.
By presenting a compelling and data-driven case,
Yeah.
they were able to secure buy-in from executives
Right.
and ensure that the project was properly funded.
It makes sense. especially with a transformation of this scale.
It does.
You need to demonstrate that the investment is worthwhile
Right.
and will deliver tangible results.
Absolutely. Now, remember how we talked about the importance of those deeper user journeys?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, this case study really highlights how those journeys guided the development process
Okay, remind me again, how were those user journeys different? Okay,
from traditional ones.
instead of simply outlining the steps a user takes,
Right.
they delve deeper, capturing user emotions, motivations, and even potential pain points
Interesting.
at each stage.
Yeah.
This deeper understanding was instrumental in designing a system
Okay.
that wasn't just functional,
Right.
but also intuitive and enjoyable to use.
It's like those user journeys became the blueprint
They did.
for creating a truly user-centered system.
Exactly. And they didn't stop there.
Okay.
They also had a well-defined sourcing strategy
Interesting.
to help them make informed decisions
Okay.
about procuring the necessary products and services.
That makes sense. With a digital transformation of this magnitude,
It does.
you're probably dealing with a lot of different vendors and technologies.
A lot.
Right.
Right. They needed a strategy to evaluate different options,
Yeah.
negotiate contracts,
Right.
and ensure they were getting the best value for their money.
So they had the program strategy, the governance, the stakeholder engagement.
The roadmaps, the business case, and the sourcing strategy. What else did they use from the framework?
Well, they knew that launching the new system was just the first step
Right.
to ensure the transformation was sustainable.
Yeah.
They really focused on the transition strategy.
So it's not just about building the new system.
Right.
It's about making sure it can be effectively maintained and supported over the long term.
You got it. They outlined the necessary organizational structures,
Okay.
capabilities, and resources
Mhm.
needed for the long haul.
So things like training programs for staff,
Yes.
new operational procedures, even changes to the organizational culture
Right.
to embrace the new digital way of working.
Exactly.
It's like they were building a bridge from the old way of doing things to
Yeah.
the new way,
Mhm.
making sure the transition was as smooth as possible.
As smooth as possible. And to top it all off,
Okay.
they had a robust change and adoption strategy.
I'm guessing this was all about getting people to actually use the new system
Yes.
and embrace the changes.
Precisely. It involved a comprehensive communication plan,
Okay.
training programs, and ongoing support
Wow.
to help users adapt to the new system and realize its full benefits.
Got it.
They even created a champion network,
Interesting.
enlisting enthusiastic employees to promote the new system
Oh, wow.
and help their colleagues through the transition.
Wow. They really thought of everything. It's like they had a plan for every stage
You did.
of the transformation journey.
They did. And the best part,
What's that?
it worked.
That's awesome.
The transformation was a success, exceeding expectations
Wow.
in terms of both business outcomes and user satisfaction.
That's incredibly inspiring. It shows that the strategy to execution framework
Yes.
is more than just a theory.
Right.
It's a practical roadmap
Mm-hmm.
that can lead to real-world results.
Absolutely. And while this case study focuses on a large-scale digital transformation,
Yeah.
the principles and strategies outlined can be
Okay.
applied to any product development effort, regardless of size or complexity.
That's great news for our listener who's probably thinking,
Right.
okay, this is all great, but how can I actually put this framework into practice?
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to explore
Perfect.
in the final part of our deep dive.
Awesome.
We'll delve into the practical aspects
Say.
of implementing this framework,
Yeah.
offering some tips and tools that product managers can use to turn these strategies into action.
Can't wait. See you in part 3.
See you then.
Welcome back, listener. We've explored the ins and outs of the strategy to execution framework.
We have.
We even took a peek at a real-world case study
Yeah.
to see how it all comes together.
Right.
But I'm sure you're thinking, okay, that's all well and good,
Yeah.
but how do I actually use this framework
Right.
in my day-to-day work as a product manager?
In the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like having a shiny new toolbox,
Uh-huh.
but no idea which wrench to use for what.
Right.
So let's get practical. What are some actionable tips our listener can take away from this deep dive?
First and foremost, just get familiar with the framework document itself. Think of it as your instruction manual.
Uh-huh.
It's packed with details
Yeah.
on those 9 key strategies that we've been discussing.
So it's not just about reading it passively.
Right.
It's about really digging in
Yes,
and extracting those golden nuggets of wisdom.
absolutely. Highlight key passages, make notes.
Okay.
Even create your own summary document.
Got it.
Turn it into a checklist that you can reference throughout your product development process.
And if there's one thing this framework screams, it's collaboration.
It is.
How can our listener foster that collaborative spirit
Yeah.
when implementing this framework?
You're absolutely right. Product managers can't operate in a silo.
Right.
They need to work closely with everyone involved.
Yeah.
Executives, developers, designers, marketers, the customer support team,
The whole gang.
the whole game.
So it's all about breaking down those departmental walls
It is.
and creating a shared understanding
Yes,
of what you're trying to achieve.
precisely. Make communication a priority.
Okay.
Schedule regular check-in meetings, brainstorm together,
Yeah.
hold cross-functional workshops.
Great.
The goal is to get everyone rowing in the same direction.
And I've noticed the guide is a big fan of visual tools.
It is.
How can our listener use visuals
Yeah.
to make this framework come to life?
Visuals are fantastic
Okay.
for communicating complex information
Yeah.
and making it easier for everyone to grasp that big picture.
Right.
Think about using mind maps
Uh-huh.
to brainstorm ideas,
Okay.
flowcharts to visualize processes,
Got it.
or Kanban boards to track progress.
It's like taking an abstract concept
Yes,
and turning it into something tangible
it is.
that everyone can see and interact with.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of those user journey maps,
Right.
especially those deeper user journeys we talked about. Yeah.
Visualizing the user's experience,
Mm-hmm.
including their emotions and pain points, can be a game changer
Totally.
when it comes to designing user-centric products.
This makes me think about the need for continuous learning and adaptation.
Yes.
How can our listener build that into their team's DNA?
It's all about creating a culture
Okay.
that embraces experimentation
Uh-huh.
and welcomes both successes and failures
Yeah.
as learning opportunities.
I like that.
Encourage your team to try new things, gather feedback,
Okay.
and don't be afraid to iterate based on what you learn.
So it's about being agile, embracing change,
Yes,
and constantly striving to improve.
exactly. The tech world moves fast,
It does.
and the only way to stay ahead of the curve
Yeah.
is to be willing to adapt and evolve.
Now let's get down to brass tacks. Are there any specific tools our listener can use to make implementing this framework easier?
There are tons of great tools out there,
Okay.
but the best choices will depend on your team's specific needs.
Yeah. And workflow.
Right.
For project management, you've got options like Jira or Asana.
Uh-huh.
For collaboration platforms like Slack or Microsoft Teams can be super helpful.
Yeah.
And for prototyping tools like Figma or InVision can be real game changers.
It's like having a whole arsenal of weapons to fight those product development battles.
It is. But remember, the most important tool is the human element.
Oh, for sure.
Collaboration, communication,
Yeah.
and that shared commitment to success.
Right.
Those are the things that will ultimately make or break your product launch.
So true. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, listener.
We have.
Hopefully you're feeling equipped and inspired to tackle your next product launch
That's right.
with a strategy to execution framework by your side.
It's a great tool.
Remember, it's not just about launching products.
It's not.
It's about creating something truly valuable
Yes,
that solves real problems for your users.
absolutely.
And that's what makes being a product manager so exciting and rewarding.
And
Until next time, keep diving deep.
see you next time.